that wasn't asked and wasn't explained in Eis Dalet. In Eis Dalet, we said that the neshama experiences an aliyah, an elevation by virtue of coming down into this world. And we didn't understand that because if the neshama is sourced in Atzmus, how can it possibly experience an elevation? The Rebbe is now answering that question by virtue of explaining first the idea of, first the medrash, V'min nimlach v'nishvasem shel tzadikim. The Rebbe's going to explain the meaning of that medrash now, but first the Rebbe brought that medrash in order to show us very clearly that the source of the neshama is in Atzmus. Because where was that counsel taken, so to speak? Regarding what was that counsel taken? All state of reality outside of the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning even the highest levels of godly light were part of that decision, so to speak. Okay, so where was that question asked? Up in Atzmus. Okay, so the neshama is sourced in Atzmus. And if the neshama is sourced in Atzmus, then how in the world does it experience an elevation when it comes into Elam Hazeh? Because again, there's nothing higher. That's where it all begins. There's nothing that brings Atzmus into existence. Might be a different copy. You don't have your own copy? You had your own copy. You have to have mercy on the trees who are Meiser Nefesh to give you these pieces of paper and keep them. Okay. Let me ask you guys a question before we continue. Rabbi Levinger is going away, and they asked me if his guys could join our shir. Now we are going to start a new mimer tomorrow. I'll do something more basic, meaning similar to this. This is a relatively basic mimer. I wanted to do it at some point with you guys. I'll do it now. If that's okay with you, that they show up in our class. Now, it means we're going to go a little slower, obviously, right? And there might be the odd question that you guys wouldn't ask. But in general, is that okay for 3, 4 days, 5 days? Okay, I thought you'd say that, but it's your call, not mine.
We might just have to go to a different room.
Right? Yes, we might have to go to a different room, which is... I guess we'll have to go to the JSP. Okay, so I'll tell Rabbi Chazan that that's okay, that you guys are happy with it. I mean, I didn't want to make that decision for you, especially if some of you just left that class, so, don't worry, you're not being demoted. Okay. So, in order to explain the idea of the elevation of the neshama from that level of you can't say elevation from Atzmus, but so to speak, in Atzmus, however that works. The first thing we saw in the answer, in the explanation, which was the last thing we saw yesterday, was the notion of Yisrael alu b'machshav, that Am Yisrael went up on thought. So the Rebbe explained as follows, right? Based on the Maggid, that just like a parent has the image of their child deeply ingrained in their conscious reality, so that even if that child is not in front of them, they can see that child clearly and experience the existence of that child very, very powerfully. Right? So too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu relative to Am Yisrael. But of course there's a rather major difference. Relative to the parent can only have an experience of that child once the child actually comes into existence outside of the parent, so to speak. Not so to speak, but I mean, so there's actually a child. So then the parent can obviously conjure up an image of the child before the child is born. So obviously the parent can't do that because there's no child by the Eibishter. And this is very hard for us to understand things like this relative to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The notion beyond time is just something we have a hard time. The closest, it doesn't help, but it pushes us a little bit out of our darkness, is that there might very well be, I think it's a machlokes psychologists. I don't know what, maybe there's a maskana by now. But dream time. Is there something called dream time? So it seems to be that you can dream in 5 minutes about a very long period of time. Right? Dream is actually happening for a few minutes in your head, but the events happening in the dream can take place over a much longer time than that. Right? So, which does show us somehow a little bit the notion of the flexibility of time. Right? I think, I know there was a machlekes among psychologists, but I think the maskana was that there's something called dream time. I think. I'm not sure. It's not like I'm following this closely. But I think most of us experience that things might happen in a dream. Dreams don't last very long in our head, but they seem that some of them last a long time in our conscious reality. So the Eibishter is obviously that times infinity, in that there's no limitation whatsoever of time. There's no time. Time is a creation. One of the things the Eibishter created was time. Basically created two things, time and space. That's what's down here. There's metaphysical time, metaphysical space, but down here in physical time, physical space, that's what the Eibishter created. What's in there, a third level of reality called nefesh, life. Right? So very often in Chassidus talk about nefesh, zman, and makom. Those three different levels of created reality. When you say nefesh, you mean created life. And that doesn't just refer to us. Anything that's created and is alive. So Yisrael Olam HaMachshava means that the Eibush could experience our existence before we exist. Right? Meaning before there's an existence of what you and I call created time, the Eibush could still have an experience of our existence. So to speak, the Eibush could watch the movie before it actually happens down here in Olam Hazeh. However that would work. Because that is a hard thing to understand, because if there's a reality in the Eibush, there's mind, so to speak. So generally that reality comes into being. Because in order to create, all the Eibush has to do is think about something. Because if you do anything, kulam b'chochma asisa, all of maisa, all of what you and I call action, deed, happens in the Eibush, there's chochma. So the way it's described in the Torah is speech. Because what's speech? Speech is the revelation of thought outside of you. If you want to reveal your thought outside of you, so you speak. So outside of you, that's not kaviyachol, that's true. That really is. When the Eibishter wants to bring about an existence of something, so to speak, outside of him, there is nothing outside of him, but if he wants to bring about the existence of something that appears to be, so to speak, outside of him, so that's called speech, and that's why the Torah talks about the creation of the world in terms of speech. But really, where's the world happening? It's a machshava. It's a thought, so to speak. So where's that thought, so to speak? Inside him. We're all a figment of the Eibishter's imagination. But we exist, because he created us. Because it says, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. So on some level, our existence is real. It's just not absolute. So the Maggid explains that Yisrael Olam HaMachshava means that, so to speak, there's engraved in the Eibishter's consciousness our existence, even before we came into existence. And that's the last line we saw yesterday. I'm going to start, I'm just counting down. 9 lines down, there's a period in the middle of the line, aval. We'll just say it inside, when we just said outside. Aval Hetzel Hashem Yisbarach, relative to Kodesh Baruch HaShayich, say it's relevant for the image of the Son to be engraved in the consciousness of the Father. Efshar Shayich Zeh Loimer, it's relevant to say this, Af Kedem Shenivru Yisrael. Even before we're created. Hayanechkak Tzurasim B'machshava. It's engraved our form in his thought. Why? Ki it's loy by the Eibishter ha'aver v'asi rechlag. Move on mizeh. It's understood from this. That which the souls are sourced in Atzmus. Ubehem nimlach, and so to speak, a Kadosh Baruch Hu took counsel from the neshamas. What does that mean? Who? First of all, we have to understand who inyan and neshamas kameshem bebechinas nivra. Who was being asked, so to speak. Not the neshama in its state in Atzmus, but the neshama in its state as a created neshama down here in Olam Hazeh, giving vitality to a body that's also created down here in Olam Hazeh. Now you say, but those neshamas aren't around. What does that mean? Relative to the Abishter, there's no such. I guess it's very hard for us to wrap our head around how that works. But relative to the Abishter, there's no such limitation. So even though you and I aren't down here, the Abishter could still experience our existence, so to speak. Again, watch the movie, and relate to us, and even ask us a question. So to speak, who answered yes? Because obviously we answered yes because we're here. Who answered yes? Not the neshama up there, the neshama down here. What does that mean? Oh, so let's see what the Rebbe says. It's really quite astounding. Meaning the source of the neshama as a nivra is also mushlosh b'atzmus, also sourced in atzmus. And one thing what we do say about the etzem of something, and we've talked about this before, the etzem of something, the essence of something is found in every part of it. Right? Intellect is not found in your fingers. There's a certain aspect of seichel in your fingers, to the extent that your fingers can develop muscle memory. Right? And if chas v'sholom, you've ever, it's not such a thing. If you've broken an ankle or severely sprained an ankle, so you had to do physiotherapy afterwards, so your ankle would learn how to do those things that it was not doing while it was. So, when the physiotherapist says that, you're quite shocked. My ankle has to learn how to do that. Well, try to balance on that ankle. You'll fall over. Don't do it unless you're holding on to a chair. There's a chair nearby. That's the first thing they tell you. Never do this unless you're standing next to a chair that you can grab onto. Right? Because your ankle forgot, so to speak. The injury caused your ankle to forget how to balance. So there is a certain aspect of seichel, of intellect, even in your ankle. Okay, but it's obviously not the same seichel that exists in your head. It can't do mathematics. It just knows how to balance. And, muscle memory, right? You can teach your fingers how to play a concerto. Okay. But that's because your intellect knows how to teach your fingers. And then your fingers will remember, and you can literally do it in your sleep, right? Then you just sit down at the piano and start moving your hands around and play something really quite beautiful. It's amazing to watch the people who can do it. I always wish that I had learned how to do that. Seems like an interesting thing to know how to do. Okay, but it obviously takes work, teaching the fingers how to do it. So there is an idea of seichel in everything. That being said, seichel happens up here. So seichel and fingers are two different states of reality. The essence of your soul is found in both of them equally. It's like your DNA is found in your fingers, just like it's found in the gray matter of your brain. No difference. You don't have to scrape the gray matter of the brain of the thief who showed up in the house. All you need is one little piece of skin, and you know who the guy was. Just bad for thieves. So the neshama as a nivra is also on a certain level rooted in atzmus, and the essence of the neshama powers that. Okay, so now let's see what the Rebbe says. Ukemesha Yerdis Lamat, as the neshama descends below. V'rak shegam surazu. Also, this form chakuka b'machshavta yizbarach is clothed, is engraved in the thought of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Lefisha etzla yizbarach over v'asidecha, because in the Eibishter, past and future all one. So the Eibishter can have an image of us as a created being down here in Elam Hazeh, in an beyond infinite amount of non-time before we were created. Okay. It's hard for us to understand how that works, but I think intellectually we can appreciate such an idea. It's not such a difficult idea. Okay. Uke yadu, and as is known. If you don't know this, don't worry. But Perish b'min nimlach. What's the explanation of b'min nimlach? What does it mean that the Eibishter took counsel from the neshamas of the tzaddikim? Now we know neshamas of tzaddikim. What does that mean based on this Maya? Neshamas of tzaddikim means on a certain level the neshama up there, even though it's also the source of the neshama down here, which is what the Rebbe just told us. But it's the neshama up there because that's the neshama of tzaddikim, right? And the neshama down here is Baalei Tshuva. And we're trying to understand why the Baal Tshuva is on a higher level than the tzaddik. In other words, Why is a Jew doing a mitzvah in Eilam Hazeh on a higher level than the neshama as it's sourced in the essence of God? How does that work? Shazehu masha ola lefanav yizbarach. The Rebbe says an amazing thing. This is based on a Mayim the Friedrich Rebbe of Tashim Gimel. That's why the Rebbe says Ki Yadua, because it's from the Friedrich Rebbe. Shazeh masha ola lefanav yizbarach. It went up in front of him. Hatainug, the pleasure, sheyisaneg, that he will experience, kaviyachol, even the Rebbe says kaviyachol, so to speak, ba'avedus hanashames lamata. What does ben min nimlach mean? Before the creation of the world, before even the, so to speak, final decision to create the world, what was it that caused HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create the world? Again, so to speak, he watched the movie. He experienced the pleasure that he gets from us doing mitzvahs in Eilam Hazeh. What gives the Eibishter pleasure? You and I doing what we're doing right now. We're sitting doing a mitzvah deraisa. It's called Talmud Torah, learning Torah. The Eibishter gets great pleasure from this. What convinced him to create the world? This. But this is happening in the year 5784, and that was happening in the, before year zero. And the Eibishter was no different. How that works, I don't know. It doesn't make sense, okay, for our heads. Okay. So the Eibishter could experience the pleasure that he gets from our mitzvahs before we even exist, before there's a world, before there's anything. And that pleasure, what did the Eibishter want? So let's see, let's go further. That's an amazing line. So to speak in future, but he's experiencing it now. There's no future by him. Ba'avedus and neshama lamata, and our Veda below. Based on this, it's understood the elevation that happens to the neshamas al yedei ridos and lamata, based on their descent below. Hagam, even though shagam lifnei ridos, and even before their descent, hey mushrashos batzmus yizbarach, they're rooted in etzim. Because when the Eibishter experiences that pleasure of us doing a mitzvah up there in Atzmus, what does that trigger? A desire to create a dir b'tachtonim, a desire to create a physical world. So that sets into motion all of that incredible process called the creation of the world, infinite godly light, sim risha, everything that happens, everything that's explained in Chassidus about different levels of godly reality, different levels of light, four different worlds, Atzilas, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya, all of that comes into existence. Why? What does the Eibishter want? He wants that event which he experienced, so to speak, again, I'm using a very crass example, but it just, so to speak, like the movie of watching it happen. What did he want? He wanted it to actually happen down there. He wanted it to be there. Not only in his conscious reality, to experience the pleasure of that thing. He wanted that thing, that mitzvah, that act, to actually come into being. The difference between, the Rebbe is going to explain the difference between potential reality and actual reality, which is a very, very amazing idea that the Rebbe discusses that way. We don't have to talk about it. But that's what the Eibishter wanted. So to speak, what's the advice we gave? The Eibishter took counsel. It's not that the Eibishter said, should I create a world or not? The Eibishter took counsel from us. In other words, he experienced the pleasure of our mitzvahs even before there's a world, and that's what convinced him, so to speak, I want that to actually happen. Wow. So let's see. Okay. That which the neshama is sourced in atzmus, ubehen nimlach, and in them he took counsel. That's all based on his understanding. That will be afterwards, which again, afterwards only applies to you and I, it doesn't apply to him. Yeridos and lamata, their descent below, V'yashlimu kavana, and they'll fulfill the intention. What was the intention? That we should come down and do mitzvahs, do those actions which give him this incredible pleasure. Why they give him pleasure, I haven't got a clue. But in all fairness, I don't think you understand why chocolate gives you pleasure. It just does. I don't know why it does. It just does. And certain tastes give me pleasure, and certain tastes don't give me pleasure. Why? I don't know. And is everybody the same? Absolutely not. Chacun son goût. Right? Everybody's different. And so you'll have, twins, and one will eat the peas and one will eat the corn. Because one gets pleasure from the experience of chewing peas and swallowing them, and the other gets pleasure from chewing corn and swallowing it. And the one who likes the peas takes the corn and throws it on the floor off his plate, and the one who likes the corn takes the peas and throws them off his plate. Why? Something in there. Now, there are definitely acquired tastes. There's no doubt about that. But it's also just Tainug. Where does Tainug come from? Tainug is very, very deeply rooted in our superconscious reality, even beyond will. Will is that first level of superconscious which I don't have immediate conscious control of. I can't control what I want immediately. Don't want ice cream. I can't not want ice cream. That's a ridiculous thing to say to me. I don't eat ice cream. Okay, you can tell me that. You're Fleishik, don't eat ice cream. Oh, no, yeah, right, thank you. But I still want it. Why? I don't know where that desire came from. Oh, it was this desire. Like, oh, gee, I feel like some ice cream. Where'd that come from? It's a place called will. Subconscious, superconscious, desire for ice cream came up into my conscious reality. I became aware of it, and I said, oh, that would be nice. I do not have control over that subconscious desire. I do have control of my conscious reality, such that I don't have to think about ice cream, I don't have to talk about ice cream, and I don't have to eat ice cream. That's for sure. Not thinking about it is the hardest of those three. But I could keep pushing it out of my head. Stop thinking about ice cream. Okay. I can't not want it. Over time, I can develop myself so that I no longer have a taiva for ice cream. I mean, cigarettes. I no longer have a taiva for cigarettes. That can happen over time. But tell the cigarette smoker, don't want a cigarette. That's a ridiculous thing. Even once he's past the physical addiction. He still has an emotional attachment to it. Every time he eats a meal, he thinks about smoking a cigarette. Every time he picks up a cup of coffee, he sort of has this vision. Cigarette smokers always have their cigarette over there, right? It's on the other side of the cup. Somehow that just looks cool. I don't know. Right? Okay. So he's got. So he's emotionally attached to that. You can't tell him don't want one. In 5 years, he won't want one. He does have a long-term. He can have a long-term effect on his subconscious reality. Ratzon, but not immediate. Tainug is even deeper than that. Because generally, what causes the ratzon? Why do I want something? It gives me pleasure. Why? I don't know. I don't know why that gives me pleasure and that doesn't. I don't know. Why don't cold feet feel good? Right? But when your feet get cold, it doesn't feel good, right? Why not? Why does it not feel good? Why? I mean, the Abish couldn't create us that we enjoy the feeling of cold feet. Of course, he could have created that experience. Why not? He didn't. So when you're, hiking in the snow and your feet get cold and you have to stop and massage, take off your boots and massage your toes, so and then start hiking again. So it's not pleasant when they get cold. It hurts. Okay. Perhaps you can make it wow, I can't wait until my feet get cold. I'm so excited. Right? Now, when you're hiking in the summer and it's really, really, really hot and you're schwitzing, what's one of the greatest pleasures that anybody could ever experience in Elam Hazan? Taking off your shoes and putting them in a freezing cold mountain creek. You go, wow, does this feel good? Oh my goodness gracious, right? Why do I get pleasure from that? I don't know. We just do, right? It's deeply rooted way back then. We have no control over that. No control over that. Now, I can acquire tastes. So, most males try in the world, not in our culture per se, even in our culture, unfortunately, it might also be the case, but most males try to develop a taste for alcohol. children don't like alcohol, right? They'd say, this is terrible. They're right. It has a horrible taste, right? Why would anybody like this? Now, even beer is a little bitter, right? It's not exactly, Tropicana just tastes better than a beer, right? I mean, what are you going to say? It just has a better taste. Naturally, you're going to like Tropicana more than, but I want to be I'm going to sit there in the bar and drink Tropicana. I mean, what a wuss. Okay, so you have to drink a beer. And then they'll talk about Scotch. Oh, this is a nice peaty flavor. It tastes like gasoline. I mean, why would you want to drink this stuff? What? No, you can't. But in all fairness, you really can develop a taste for it. And there are people who truly enjoy the taste. They're not making it up. No one's going to go on a and spend a lot of money, go on a distillery tour in Scotland if they don't like the taste of Scotch. That's just a ridiculous thing to do with your life. Do something else. So I guess they like it. Acquired taste. That means it gives them pleasure also. It's an acquired taste. That can happen. That can also happen in Ruchnius. No, naturally, your Nefesh Elokis appreciates and gets pleasure from Elokus. Okay, but does my Nefesh Bahamis get pleasure from Elokus? Naturally, no. Can I acquire that taste? Absolutely. Absolutely. Like Chassidus, daven, hang around Chassidim, for bread. They'll do all those things that we do, and we'll acquire a taste for Elokus. What do we say every Shabbos? Famous line in Tehillim that the Alter Rebbe quotes, and the Rebbe quotes the Alter Rebbe, quoting it with the special niggin of the Alter Rebbe. He used to always sing when he spoke. Tamu ki tov havayo. Taste and see as the Eibishter is good. Taste and see God's good. We have to taste it. We have to develop a taste for it. Right? Now, taste and see, simple pshat is, once you taste it, you'll see that it's good. Okay. We also have to develop a taste. So the Eibishter, for whatever reason, gets tainug from you and I doing a mitzvah. So why did he create the world? Because he wanted that to happen in actuality. He didn't just want it to be, so to speak, that movie in his reality. That's such an amazing idea. So up there in Atzmus, what is it? So to speak, the movie. Down here in Olam Hazeh, what is it? It's what he actually wanted. He didn't want to simply experience the pleasure like he can even before we exist. He wanted more. He wanted to experience the pleasure because it's actually happening in Olam Hazeh. So therefore, you and I, when we do a mitzvah in Olam Hazeh, are more powerfully connected to that aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu than we are in Atzmus. In Atzmus, we're just the movie. Down here, we're the real thing. What does Atzmus want? He wants you and I to do a mitzvah. Not in some place in the Eibishter's consciousness, but down here in Olam Hazeh Gash. So when we do that, we're more powerfully connected to the Eibishter. Wow. And not chas v'shalom to think that, I reach a higher place after I die and go, no. Now here, Olam Hazeh, right this minute, our neshamas are closer to the Eibishter than our neshama was before it descended down into Olam Hazeh. Why? Because we're doing a mitzvah d'oraisa. Why? V'agam, and even though shegam betchilo, even though shegam betchila, even originally, yedim bevados gemudah sheyashlimu kavanah, it's absolutely known that we're going to fulfill the intention, so it's not a chiddush, meaning that mitzvah's already happened, so to speak, up there in the Eibishter's consciousness. That's all in potential, relative to down here. But tachli sa'ilui, the ultimate elevation, v'hakavona, and the intention, and what the Eibishter want, who are pale, is that it should actually happen down here in Olam Hazeh. It's amazing. The Rebbe talks about this quite a bit in the Sikha before the Mayim, the difference between Koyach and Pale. And this is a very, very interesting take on potential and actual. Generally, what separates potential and actual? What's the difference between potential, literally, what separates that place where it's in a state of potential and that place where it's in a state of actuality? What's
Action. Action.
Okay, but that's the actuality. That is the actuality. What separates the koyach from the payil?
It's happening.
Physicality.
It's occurring. It's happening.
Okay, so what's separating it from being in a state of potential? I know when I say what I think the answer is, you go, oh yeah, okay, you're just, yeah?
Isn't it existence, if something is theoretically existent, that means it's basically possible, but it's not an actuality.
So what's separating that state of potential to that state of, I'm not asking what is the difference, I'm asking what is separating those two? What's between them?
Doing it.
Time. What? That's right. I know, right? But that is what's between them, right? It's in a state of potential. At some point in time, it will be actualized, right? Now, true?
Not necessarily.
Well, it might not be, but if there is a koyach and a payil, then what's in between them? Time is in between the state where it was in a state of potential and the state where it's in a state of actuality. It's true, it might not reach a state of actuality. That's true. What Shalom is saying is true. But if it does, what was in between? There might have been all sorts of stuff happening in between, but basically there was a passage of time, and it might be all sorts of things had to happen in that time to take it from this place to this place. But by definition, there's time in between them. Okay, so therefore, on a certain level, those two realities don't exist in the Eibishter's world as they exist in ours. Because in the Eibishter's world, there's no time. Right? So that's why in general, philosophically, so to speak, when the Rambam will talk about godly reality, all the Jewish so-called philosophers, they're not philosophers, they're explaining Torah, but it's called Jewish philosophy, right? It's not really a bad name. In Hebrew, it's not called Jewish philosophy, it's called Machshavas Yisrael, Jewish thought. They're thinking about things and trying to understand it. Philosophy, by definition, should theoretically, should come from us. Okay, but they'll describe the fact that the Eibishter is always in a state of payil. There's no koyach. It just always is. It's always a state of actual reality. Whereas here, if the Rebbe is talking about koyach and payil in a slightly different way, such that the other Rabbi, by the Eibishter, it's in a state of koyach, and only down here does it come into a state of payil. And that's relative to the Eibishter's taiva. What was the taiva? The taiva was that this action should happen in Gashmias. And in Gashmias, there's a difference between koyach and payil. So relative to that, the action above is only the potential for it to reach its actualized state in physical reality. And that's what the Eibishter wanted. What was the taiva? The taiva was physical mitzvah. That was the taiva. That's what's up there in Atzmus, so to speak. Oh, so when you and I, but Atzmus is a place where there's no limitation. Elokus B'chlal is a place where there's no limitation of time. So we can also talk about the fact that the Eibishter has experienced what we're about to do already. Okay, but that experience wasn't the experience he wants. He wants the experience to be a function of what we actually did down here in Olam Hazeh Gashmi, in the physical world. And that's the mitzvah. That's the real tainug. That's the real taiva. The blueprint of it is as it exists above in his consciousness. The actuality of it is how you and I do it down here. So when are we more powerfully connected to the Eibishter? When we do it down here. Because we up there are only, so to speak, part of the movie. We down here are the essential taiva itself. That's what he wants. So yes, you can experience an elevation of your neshama by virtue of doing a mitzvah down here in Olam Hazeh, because that's ultimately the whole purpose of the neshama, even though it's rooted in Atzmus. V'zeu gam diuk haloshen b'min nimlach b'nishmasem shel tzadikim. This is also a careful reading of the words, in whom did he take counsel? The neshamas of the tzadikim. Shebiyesim bebechinas hamlocha, that when they were still in that quality of hamlocha, of advice, sha'az, then ha'ilui shalem, the loftiness of them, hu bekoyach, is still only in a state of potential. It hasn't come into a realized state. When does it come into a realized state? Again, in our context, later, after creation. This is all before creation. So when doesn't apply up there, but okay, those are the words you and I can use. When the Eibishter asked the neshamas, so to speak, meaning when the Eibishter experienced the possibility of neshamas being in the world and doing mitzvahs, and that convinced him to create the world. When that happened, on what level were the neshamas? Tzaddikim. They hadn't descended below in actuality yet. There was no Baal Tshuva yet. Right? There's no world. It was all potential. What's the lofty that we know they're going to come down and do it, but it hasn't happened yet. So the neshamas are tzaddikim. They're on that level that we've been calling tzaddikim, the neshama above. And after they descend below, the Eibishter actually creates the world and creates something called time and space, and that neshama comes down into time and space and puts on tefillin and gives tzedakah and helps another Jew and acts kindly to people and learns Torah and eats matzah on Pesach and shakes a green stick and a lemon on Sukkot and all those things that we do. Then they're fulfilling the intention in actuality. They become Balei Tshuva, and that's why the Baal Tshuva is of a higher level than the Tzaddik. Because the Baal Tshuva is the actual expression of the Taiva. The Tzaddik is the potential that the Taiva could be expressed. Wow. It's just unbelievable. So welcome, Dei Lamazah. This is where it's at, so to speak. Somehow, the Eibishter has seen this movie before. But, I mean, if it's a bad mushal because there's no good mushal when you're talking about atzmos, right? I mean, it just doesn't. But it's like the director of the play that has seen rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal, so to speak, right? So he knows this play backwards and forwards. Right? He knows everything that's going to happen, and it's already happened for him and all the actors. It's happened for them too. But what's it really all about? Opening night. And what does the director experience on opening night? Wow! Like that's the wow, right? That's what it all, right? It already happened. There's no surprises, right? There's nothing like, oh my goodness gracious, what a great line. What do you mean what a great line? You've heard that line 14 times a day for the last 3 weeks while these people have been practicing. And you've been there. And you say it this way, say it that way. Okay. But what's the true desire of the director? For the curtain to open on opening night. That's the real time. So to speak, you and I doing a mitzvah down here is like that's the real thing. Up there, we're rehearsing, so to speak. But the rehearsal convinced the Eibishter that he wants, maybe there's taka plays, I don't know, I would imagine so in the world of theater, that someone, has an idea for a play and they write it up and they start rehearsing it and this doesn't go and they just can it. They probably, stop it even before it, could be. So they're... Okay, so the Eibishter saw what was going on. Went, I want that to happen. I want that to happen, so to speak, outside of me. There's nothing outside of me. You want it to happen down here. That's the real time. That's the real time. So here we are. So your neshama is closer to the Eibishter when you're doing a mitzvah down here than it is as it's rooted in Atzmos up there. Okay, let's just finish up a very, very simple ending to the Mayim. Again, for those of you who weren't here right at the beginning of Shir, so for the next few days, Rabbi Leveringer's class is going to join us. So we're going to go, I guess, we're not doing it outside where they do it.
No.
We're going to do it in the JSP room, which is bigger, and we'll do a short Mayim. He's gone, I think, for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. So we're going to do whatever we do. If we finish in 4 days, we'll start something new Monday and they'll play Parcheesi. I don't know what they'll do. But if it takes us 5 days, we'll take us 5 days. All right, we'll do something relatively short. Okay? It's a Mayim that I really want to learn with you guys, so we'll learn it all together with them too. V'yesh l'kasher zeh im inyan v'Yakov halach l'darkei. She can connect this with the idea of Yaakov halach l'darkei, right? Which is that which we say, Meitzi Shabbos, well, we say it right after Simchas Torah, Yaakov's going on his way. In other words, Yaakov is leaving the Beis Hamikdash and going back home. So there's 3 steps in that. There's Yaakov halach l'darkei right after Simchas Torah, there's Yaakov halach l'darkei after Shabbos Bereshis, and the ultimate Yaakov halach l'darkei is Parshas Noach, because that's the first parsha that's mamish not in Tishrei. Shebemeitzi Shabbos Parshas Noach. Dagam, that even though Shalach Chodesh Tishrei, even though after Chodesh Tishrei Hu Hailach l'darkei, he goes on his way, Gam binyanei reshus, even doing things that are permissible but not obligatory, right? Everyday life, things that you're allowed to do, but you don't have to do them. Ube'uvdin dechel, and matters of mundane import. Va'ad lebechinas Mayim Rabim, until ultimately he descends into the Mayim Rabim. He goes back to work and he's dealing with making a living. He called Mokem al Yedei Zeh Gufa, by virtue of this itself, whom Yisrael Yesu, he's actually elevated. Shenase bebechinas Mahalech, he becomes a walker, someone who is progressing and getting closer and closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Koloshon HaKosov Yaakov halach l'darkei. He's a Mahalech. He's progressing, as opposed to an angel who's called him Oimed. Stands, doesn't progress, doesn't move, doesn't grow. And the pasuk, who's the pasuk? It's a pasuk in Nach, one of the Nevi'im. I don't remember which Navi it is. Mahalchim beina Oimdim. That the people are called the ones who progress amongst those who are standing. People as opposed to angels. Mahalchim beina Oimdim. The ones who move. We move, we grow, we learn, we change. Okay, that's a person. Yaakov halach l'darkei. Yaakov goes on his way. V'yediyah zu, and this understanding that we're leaving the Beis Hamikdash takes us to a higher level. In the Beis Hamikdash, in last week's parsha, but Lech Lecha. And Lech Lecha, always, Zayin Mar Cheshvan always falls out in Parshas Lech Lecha. It's one of the few special days of the year that always falls out in the same parsha. Pesach can fall out in different parshas. Sometimes V'ikra, sometimes Tzav, Shmini. Yom Kippur, sometimes it's before Hazinu, sometimes it's after Hazinu. But Zayin Mar Cheshvan always falls out in Parshas Lech Lecha. So the Rebbe says there must be a connection between Zayin Mar Cheshvan and Parshas Lech Lecha. What's Zayin Mar Cheshvan? Zayin Mar Cheshvan is Tishrei's over. You're now back where you were. So it's interesting. Zayin Mar Cheshvan marks the fact that we've left the Beis Hamikdash. Lech Lecha is about going to Kedusha. Go to a higher place. Right? And Zayin Mar Cheshvan is all about leaving the higher place and going back to the mundane place. So the Rebbe, of course, explains, as he's explaining here, that no, the true elevation is leaving the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, what are we like? We're like a worker. What's a worker? A worker usually is pretty close to the boss. He's dealing with the boss's stuff. And he's getting paid to do it. And he's doing it for himself, not for the boss. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't care about the boss, but he's doing it because he's receiving something as a result of his work, and that's why he's at work. The Rebbe says in the Beis Hamikdash, we're like a socher, we're like a worker. We're right next to the boss, which is a very, very beautiful thing. But why are we there? We're there to gather up and receive all sorts of spiritual energy and spiritual power and spiritual elevation, so we'll take that with us as we go back to where we're supposed to be. When we leave, what do we become? A shaliach. What's a shaliach all about? Lech lecha, go. You're far away now. What are you doing? The shaliach is more closely connected to the one who sends him. Shluchah shalad l'kamesei. The one who's sent out is like the person who sent it. As a matter of fact, he can do things for him in his place, mamash. Shaliach of Reuben can send the shaliach to go marry Dinah. And when Shimon goes to Dinah and says, "Will you marry Reuben?" and gives her a ring, she's married to Reuben. It's as if Reuben was standing there. So that's a shaliach. So it says as we leave the Beis Hamikdash, we actually are elevated to a higher state. Why? Because what's the Eibishter really interested in? Yes, we have to go to the Beis Hamikdash to gather into ourselves all of the koyach that we need to go do the work outside. But really, the ikar work is outside. That's why we spend most of our time outside of the Beis Hamikdash and not in it. That's Yaakov Halach Ladarke. The ultimate purpose is to be in this world. V'yadiyazu, this understanding, shi'arido, that this descent, Ladarke binyan reshus, to go back to his mundane matters, Hitzarach Ali is ultimately the purpose of an ascent. So that's Paelis, that causes Sha'alicha Tir B'Simcha B'Tuv Leila, that he'll be very joyous when he leaves. Right? Even though he's leaving something very, very special, he'll be very joyous to leave it because he realizes he's going to something even greater. Right? Now, when he's in the Beis Hamikdash, what does he have to think about? Only being in the Beis Hamikdash. That's where he is. And if he does that properly, then he's not thinking about leaving and taking all the keiches with him. When he's in the Beis Hamikdash, his whole consciousness is being in the Beis Hamikdash. Then, when he leaves, he takes with him a tremendous amount of koyach. If while he's in the Beis Hamikdash, all he's thinking about is taking this with him when he leaves, so then he's not there, so he's not getting anything. Rabbi talks about that relative to Yeshiva. Boya lateva lech min teva. Noyach, 2 weeks ago. Coming to the teva. What's that? Coming to the words of Torah, words of tefillah. Sit and learn. Lech min teva. Say min teva. At some point, Noyach is told, go out of the wood. Go out of the Beis Medrash. Okay, but if you come into the Beis Medrash solely with the understanding that I'm here to prepare to leave, then I was never there. When I'm there, I have to be there 100%. All I'm doing is what's there. That's the proper preparation to leave. Then when I leave, I got something. I'm leaving with something. But if I'm in the Beis Medrash solely to prepare to leave the Beis Medrash, then I'm never in the Beis Medrash. My head's already outside. So I'm not gathering together for myself that which I need in order to go outside. So the proper preparation to leave the Beis Medrash is to not think about any reality outside of the Beis Medrash when I'm in the Beis Medrash, which is where you guys are now in your lives, which is an amazing place to be. Right? So what do? Live it, breathe it, be part of the teva. There's nothing else out there. At some point, what am I going to do? I'm going to take all this and go out, because the ultimate purpose is to go out 100%. But I'm thinking about the ultimate purpose while I'm inside, that I'm not inside. I'm not doing it. So Rebbe in Parshas Noach, there's no question that we're learning Torah ultimately as a Bachar in Yeshiva, ultimately so that we can go into the world and turn the world upside down and bring Mashiach. There's no question. The only way I can do that is that when I'm in Yeshiva, I'm completely focused on one thing and one only, and that's life in Yeshiva. Then I'm preparing. But I'm not prepared, I'm just doing it. Okay, then that's... But if I know that leaving is for the right reason, that going back out of Tishrei into Cheshvan, into mundane reality, after all of the incredible elevation of Tishrei and the beauty of Tishrei, I realize that when it's time to leave, that's actually an elevation, so then I leave with joy. Like Yaakov's on his way, he's leaving Eretz Yisrael, he's on his way to Lovan. Lovan is a creep deraisa, and he knows he's going to be dealing with a big-time creep for a while. Okay, he's met him before, right? I mean, he's been, he's heard of Lovan. Okay, so Eliezer met Lovan. They know who Lovan is. Okay, so Yaakov is now going to Lavan's house. And he's not the best guy in the world. He knows that. And who knows whether or not he's so excited about this. I mean, he's going because his brother wants to kill him. His mother sends him. He goes. All of a sudden he realizes he was by the Beis Hamikdash and he didn't stop, so he goes back. He ends up in Beis Kel, and the Eibishter rolls up the base of Mikdash and takes it to Beis Kel. Okay, the whole story of his dream with the ladder, etc. Okay, that whole amazing story. And in that story, what does the Eibishter tell him? Don't worry, it's all for a purpose. It's all positive, etc., etc., etc. And after he's told all that, what does it say? That's what the Rebbe quotes here. V'yisa Yaakov Roglav. He lifted up his feet. In other words, he was walking with a spring in his step. He was besimcha. The first time he went, before he came back, he went and came right back. He realized there was something missing. He hadn't done something. Rashi and Chumash in the beginning of Parshas Vayetze. So when he leaves, he's not so sure this is. I mean, he's leaving because he has to leave, but it's not mamish b'simcha. It's only after the Eibishter explains to him what this is all about, and he realizes that this is a descent for the purpose of an ascent. Then the pasuk says that he's walking with joy. He lifted up his feet. In other words, he was walking in a joyful way. When Mishan Yisbas said it after he'd been told the good news as to why it is he's going and what it's all about. And that causes the simcha, which is what we're going to learn about next, the importance of simcha in Vedas Hashem. That his Aveda will be complete, and beyond limitation. The third level in Shema, is beyond your normal abilities. Because joy bursts through boundaries. And in a state of joy, a person can accomplish things that they don't necessarily accomplish normally. They act in a way that's beyond the limitations that they usually experience. Simcha Peretzes Geder is a statement from the Rebbe Rashab and the famous Maimer Samach to Samach, the footnotes down below. Very, very famous statement that everybody says, but the source of it is the Rebbe Rashab. It's not a Maimer Chazal. It's Rebbe Simcha Peretzes Geder. The Simcha bursts boundaries. What's the simplest mushal of it all? It's probably considered this all over in order to explain the idea. The miser, who never gives a nickel to tzedakah. When he's marrying off his daughter, what's he busy spreading all over the place at the wedding? Stuck with everybody. Why? Gets beyond himself. Simcha takes him beyond himself. Right? So he's willing to give tzedakah and spend a lot of money on the wedding and give charity, and he's not a miser when it comes to his daughter's wedding. And Simcha Peretzes Geder. By virtue of the fact that a person serves his service, in all three different, skip the brackets in the brackets for a second, the brackets in the parentheses, no, the parentheses in the brackets, sorry. The Torah Aveda of Gemilas Chosadim, of Torah Aveda, davening, Gemilas Chosadim, tzedakah, and what does that relate to? Back to the parentheses in the middle, Gimel B'nei Noach, those are the three sons of Noach. But Tachlis Hashlemus Simchatuv Levov, in a complete and total way, with great joy and gladness of heart. Nimshach loy, it's also drawn down to him. Gam birchas havaya b'chol mitzdarech loy, the baruch of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we started at the beginning of the Maimer, right? How to make a living. It's a long time ago, right? Nimshach loy gam birchas havaya b'chol mitzdarech loy. It's drawn down to him the baruch of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and all that he needs. But Gimel and Yonim in the three realities of Bani, children, Chaya, health, Mezoni, sustenance. But Tachlis Hashlemus in a complete way, Ubesimcha Tuv Levov in a joyous way, Hein Beruchnius both in spiritual terms, Hein Begashmius and in material terms, Uberuchnius and Begashmius Gam Yachad and both of them together. Mayim Rabim. A mimer to learn and learn again and learn again. And remember, the beginning is so unbelievably important in order to maintain a proper perspective on making a living. And the rest of the mimer is so unbelievably important in order to appreciate what life in Eilam Hasa is all about and what we can actually accomplish down here. It's astounding. Okay. We will start a new mimer tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll be in the JSP room for a few days.